A 2025 National Nuclear Energy Public Opinion Survey reported that 72% of Americans favor nuclear power versus the 28% who don't. This is actually a much higher percentage than I had originally thought I was going to find when I started my research, but a majority of these people stand somewhere in the middle, with 65% reporting their favorability as somewhat favor or somewhat oppose. This high percentage remains constant through every demographic that data was collected on. And when these people were asked why they stand somewhere in the middle, the overwhelming majority of them said they stand somewhere in the middle because they don't feel informed about it. Of those people who were more opposed to it, the main words they mentioned when asked, "What are the main reasons for your opinion on nuclear energy?" were nuclear and danger, with a few other main contributors such as waste, safety, environment, and just bad. So why are these the words most commonly associated with an unfavorable view on nuclear energy use? My theory. On April 26, 1986, approximately 1:23 in the morning, the chain reaction of detrimental events that caused the Chernobyl reactor number 4 to explode and release radioactive material commenced, creating what is regarded as the worst nuclear incident in history. Hi, my name's Riley Esparza, and for the next 5 to 10 minutes, you're going to have to endure me discussing how Chernobyl has permanently changed the public's perception on nuclear power. To start, I feel like it's important I give a quick rundown of what actually happened at Chernobyl, because I've learned most people just don't know, and the more concerning thing I've learned is some people just don't know what Chernobyl is in the first place, which is problematic for the purpose of this video essay. So welcome to my very quick, not the most concise rundown of what actually happened at Chernobyl. The reactor was equipped with safety features and an emergency cooling system. The most important part of this incident was the positive void coefficient feature. This means that the more voids or air bubbles in the water, the higher the rate of nuclear fission is because of the lower density of the water. So, more bubbles, more fission. Put that on a t-shirt. The reactor had been shut down for routine maintenance on April 25th, and to take advantage of this, they decided that they would test to see how long the turbines could continue to supply power to the cooling circular pumps in the event of emergency. This test had been conducted the year prior, but the turbines ran out of energy too fast and new voltage regulators had been put in. But the people who were in charge of the test and the people who were aware of all the safety stuff didn't really properly communicate. So the emergency core cooling system has shut down, and to stabilize the reactor, it needed to be running at about 700 to 100 megawatts thermal. But at the time, it was only about 30. Frustrated in an attempt to up this, the control rods were withdrawn. And this was done, only about 8 control rods would have been at use at the time, and for this specific reactor, the minimum was 15. The test commenced, and the 4 turbine-powered pumps started running, but at a slower rate. The emergency protection signals came on, and the reactor was called to completely shut down. So they had to insert the control rods. But because of the reactor's flawed nature and design, when the control rods were inserted, there was a surge in power. The interaction between the hot fuel caused fuel fragmentation and rapid buildup of pressure. The 1,000-ton cover plate was blown off, not allowing the control rods to be inserted more than about halfway. The initial explosion can be attributed to the high pressure buildup. The second was probably due to hydrogen and zirconium steam interactions. This caused the core to be exposed to the atmosphere, releasing the most radiation ever to be blown into the air. Chernobyl wasn't a sudden, uncontrollable event. It was a combination of multiple operational violations by untrained staff and a horrible reactor design. It can be compared to deciding to test the engines of a jet mid-flight. But most people don't know any of that. So I understand the fear surrounding nuclear incidents, especially when we take into account the way media portrays them. From Oppenheimer to Evangelion, nuclear events are everywhere in media, and they're not always accurate. Movies and TV shows are the main ways people interact with nuclear power. A study on how nuclear power is portrayed in film analyzed 356 different movies that used nuclear power as a plot point, and found that of 356, 96% of them portrayed nuclear power negatively. That's a huge gap in percentages, and that is going to influence people, whether that be consciously or subconsciously. Now, I'm not going to sit here and pretend I don't understand why that's happening, because, yippee, the nuclear reactor's working. What a great movie. How's the reactor looking? Oh, it's running stably like it has for the past 6 years. Great. No. Where's the stakes? Where's the intrigue? How's the reactor looking? The cooling system still isn't working properly. And how long do we have till a possible meltdown? I don't even want to think about that. It's a possibility we need to be prepared for. How long? 14 hours? At most. We need to inform the public. Informing the public will cause panic, and so will a full meltdown. That won't happen. Things aren't really entertaining when they do go right, unless you're a nerd. So let's look at all those effects in action. This study had participants read 4 different fictitious articles, one regarding a Pakistani nuclear power plant that suffered an electronics failure and was forced to shut down. In the article, it mentions that some radiation may have escaped. The other 3 scenarios were an incident in a high-security laboratory working with dangerous diseases, an accident in a petroleum refinery plant, and a flood. Each article was given the same amount of background information, such as location and estimates of people at risk. These participants were then asked how many people they thought would die because of these incidents, and the results, unshockingly, showed that more fatalities were estimated for the nuclear incident than anything else, even the one where an infectious disease was released into the world. This further supports my theory that when people hear the words nuclear power, they automatically think the worst. Chernobyl itself is very interesting. I attribute it to the reason I love science. Not only is the event itself interesting, the events immediately following it and the long-term ecological effects are too. Streaming has made media much more accessible to the everyday person. You can watch almost anything instantly, as long as it's not on Disney+. We have bad representations, half-true representations, and every once in a while you get a good representation of nuclear power. So we have these disasters. We capitalize on them through media. But we leave out a few little important details, put in a half-truth here or there, and eventually we permanently infect our minds, so that stuff is always in the back of our head. But when the discussion of nuclear power does come up, even if we have further knowledge, those little things influence us whether we know it or not. Those are my theories and reasons why I think Chernobyl has permanently damaged public perception on nuclear power, but that's me taking other people's studies and regurgitating their results to you. There was one piece of data I wanted to find and use, but I could not find it anywhere. I wanted to find a study on the first words that come to mind when people think nuclear power and how those are more often than not negatively connotated. So I thought, why not take matters into my own hands? I created a survey and I got 80 responses. I could have probably gotten more, but for analyzing and time's sake, I decided to cut it off once I got to 80. The first question I asked was the question I've been dying to find an answer to. What is the first thing that comes to mind when you hear the words nuclear power? Out of my 80 respondents, 56% had something that was negatively connotated, 31% was neutral, and 12.5% was positive. Of these responses, 16 specifically mentioned Chernobyl as the first thing that comes to mind. I asked every person overall what their favorability on nuclear power was, to which 6.3% said strongly opposed, 35% said somewhat opposed, 41.2% said somewhat favor, and 17.5% said strongly favor. But my by far favorite piece of data I collected was my question on in theory versus in practice. I gave them a scenario. A nuclear power plant is set to be built and running by 2032, 20 miles from your home. How does this make you feel? Of my respondents, 55% said that they would feel negatively, 37.5% said neutral, and 7.5% said positively. This was really interesting to me considering that 17.5% of my respondents said that they strongly favor nuclear power, but only 7.5% said that they would feel positively by this scenario. This really shocked me when I first looked at it, so I decided to look further into it. I found that 14 people who either answered somewhat favor or strongly favor answered that they would feel negatively if a nuclear power plant was open 20 miles from their home. It shows that even though we have understanding of nuclear power and we understand it's safe, Chernobyl still impacts how we feel about it. The next section of the survey finally straight up asked, does the Chernobyl accident influence your opinions on nuclear power? I gave an option of I don't know what Chernobyl is because, again, as I stated earlier, some people just genuinely don't, and also a maybe because, you've got to have some middle neutral ground. 75% of people who know what Chernobyl is said that Chernobyl influences their opinions on nuclear power. I think this data supports my hypothesis that Chernobyl has influenced and impacted public perception on nuclear power forever. I think it's important to note that I purposely did not mention the other two of the big three, Fukushima and 3 Mile Island. I didn't mention them because they are their own entities, and I specifically wanted to focus on Chernobyl because I feel like it's the most misunderstood and most talked about. The misinformation and dramatization of Chernobyl has permanently skewed how we view nuclear power. And even if nuclear power is more sustainable in the long run, the nuclear industry has to work twice as hard to overcome these misconceptions. Nuclear energy has its risks, just as any form of energy production does, and I will never deny it. But I think because nuclear power is seemingly so much more complex, these risks are disproportionately more feared, even if these risks are much less likely to happen. Chernobyl is not a good representation of the nuclear industry as a whole, and I will die on that hill. But the effect it's had is a good representation on how dramatization, half-truths, and scary music can change the way people think about something forever. In the end, anything can be scary when you're not properly informed.
Well, I don't know, but I've been told uranium ore is worth more than gold.